Hello everyone. Tonight we embark on one of the most haunting and chilling mysteries ever told. Imagine a place filled with life, children playing in the dusty lanes, smoke curling from chimneys, families gathered at their tables sharing a meal, animals roaming near the barns, and a sense of warmth that only a small village can hold. Now imagine waking up the next morning to find every single person gone. Not one villager left, not a single voice, no sound of laughter, no arguments, no footsteps, not even the echo of existence. The houses stand still, as though waiting for their owners. Meals remain unfinished. Fires continue to flicker weakly in the hearth, and yet every soul has disappeared into the void. This is not just a ghost story invented to frighten children before bedtime. This is a mystery that historians, scholars, and paranormal investigators have grappled with for centuries. They call it the Vanishing Village, a place where life once thrived, but then, in a single night, was swallowed by an invisible force that left nothing but questions in its wake. Was it an ancient curse, a disaster too strange to comprehend, or perhaps something not of this earth? Our story begins in the rugged countryside of Europe, in the late 16th century. This village, whose name is deliberately lost in records, some say hidden to protect the nearby towns from sharing its fate, was home to nearly 300 people. It was self-sufficient, built upon fertile ground with strong harvests, livestock, and even a small church at its heart. Life here was simple but steady. Travelers who passed through often spoke of the village as welcoming and filled with warmth, but one evening, all of that would vanish. Reports suggest that on a summer night, travelers resting in nearby hamlets saw strange flickering lights in the sky above the valley where the village sat. Some described them as stars that moved unnaturally, darting and glowing with an intensity that made them impossible to ignore. Others spoke of a low hum that rolled across the hills, vibrating the earth as though the sky itself were alive. The villagers, unaware of the watchers from afar, continued with their night. No records suggest panic, no cries for help were heard, and no one escaped. When dawn came, the village was silent. A merchant, arriving with goods to trade, entered the settlement expecting the usual bustle. Instead, he was met with eerie stillness. Doors were wide open, cooking pots still warm, bread half sliced on the table, and livestock wandering freely as if someone had opened their pens but never returned. The merchant called out, knocking on doors, stepping into homes, but no voice answered him. He searched the church. It was empty. Candles burned down to stubs. Not a soul remained. What made the scene truly terrifying was not simply that the villagers were gone, but how they had left everything behind. Food sat unfinished, tools lay mid-use, clothes were hung as though waiting to be worn the next morning. There was no sign of flight, no evidence of struggle. It was as if, in the blink of an eye, every man, woman, and child had been plucked from existence. Authorities were called, and soon word spread across the region. Superstition was strong in those times, and whispers of curses, demons, and witchcraft grew louder with every retelling. Some feared to even approach the site, believing that whatever took the villagers might still linger. Others searched desperately for clues, but the search yielded nothing. There were no footprints leading away, no carts, no mass graves. The villagers did not leave, they simply ceased to be. The local clergy declared it an act of God's punishment. They claimed the villagers had angered heaven with sins unspoken, and that the disappearance was divine wrath. Others accused witches of dark sorcery, pointing to strange symbols carved into the wood near the church doors. Skeptics argued it must have been disease, a plague that caused survivors to flee, but this explanation crumbled quickly, for not a single body was found, and why would they flee leaving all possessions behind? Even stranger were the testimonies of those in neighboring towns. They reported dreams, vivid and disturbing, that plagued them the night the village disappeared. Many dreamt of shadowy figures moving through mist, of faceless beings standing at their doors, of voices whispering in languages they could not understand. These dreams were dismissed by some as hysteria, yet the sheer number of reports could not be ignored. It was as though the entire region had been touched by the same invisible hand. The mystery deepened when investigators uncovered strange marks in the soil around the village, perfectly circular impressions burned into the ground, as if something hot and heavy had landed or hovered there. These circles were unlike anything natural and could not be explained by farming tools or wagons. They glowed faintly at night, according to witnesses, and grass refused to grow over them for years to come. Legends soon grew, passed down through generations. Some said the villagers were taken underground, swallowed by a cavern that opened beneath their feet. Others believed the entire village was transported to another realm, a shadow world that sometimes bled into our own. And of course, there were those who whispered of lights in the sky, beings not human who came down to take the village as part of an experiment. Yet for every legend, a skeptic rose to deny it. Historians suggested mass migration, though this theory collapses under the weight of evidence left behind. How could an entire village abandon everything in a single night without telling neighboring towns, without leaving tracks, without bringing their livestock or valuables? Some suggested bandits or raiders, but no bodies, no stolen goods, and no signs of violence were ever discovered. The Vanishing Village became a forbidden place. For decades, no one dared to resettle there. Superstition kept people away, and the land grew wild again. The buildings, once filled with laughter and song, rotted in silence. Travelers passing by reported a strange heaviness in the air, as if unseen eyes watched them from the shadows. Some even claimed to hear faint whispers when the wind blew through the empty homes, voices that echoed like those of the villagers calling out from another world. Even in modern times, when science seeks to strip away the supernatural, the Vanishing Village remains unsolved. Archaeologists who returned centuries later still found no evidence of what happened. Tools, pottery, and structures remained as they had been left. Yet no graves, no human remains, and no written records were found to explain the sudden departure. This story, chilling in its silence, forces us to ask, what kind of power could erase an entire community overnight? And more importantly, could it happen again? We left off at the unsettling silence of the Vanishing Village, where every trace of human life seemed to have been swallowed by the unknown. The more one studies this mystery, the deeper it grows, for the disappearance is not only unexplained but also eerily deliberate, as though the event itself was meant to remain unsolved. Tonight, we continue peeling back the layers, venturing into the most disturbing theories and the strange encounters that followed centuries later. In the decades after the disappearance, whispers of the village spread far beyond its borders. Sailors carried the tale to distant ports, and scholars debated it in candle-lit chambers. Yet the most troubling aspect was not the absence of the villagers, but the peculiar details of the site itself. For instance, reports described that time seemed to behave differently within the abandoned settlement. Travelers who dared to step inside claimed their clocks stopped ticking, shadows lengthened unnaturally, and the air grew heavy, as if the atmosphere itself were weighed down. Some even insisted that when they left, more hours had passed outside than they had experienced within. Theories began to multiply. One of the most popular among locals was the curse of the land. Folklore spoke of an ancient burial ground beneath the village, a place where the restless dead were disturbed when the villagers built their homes centuries earlier. According to this legend, the spirits demanded vengeance, and one night they simply reclaimed every living soul, dragging them into the underworld. This idea of a curse was fueled by the strange dreams that continued to plague nearby settlements long after the disappearance. Generations later, people still spoke of visions where faceless villagers appeared at their doors, begging for help yet unable to speak. Another theory, darker still, was tied to the church at the center of the village. Some historians uncovered documents suggesting that the priest had grown obsessed with forbidden texts, studying scriptures not of holy design but of occult origins. The strange carvings near the church door, symbols that defied known language, were believed to be part of rituals he conducted. Could it be that the priest summoned something beyond his control, and that the entire village paid the price? This theory gained weight when a faded diary, allegedly belonging to a traveler from the time, was discovered centuries later. In its pages, he described seeing a pale figure standing at the church steps on the night before the vanishing. Tall, featureless, and glowing faintly in the dark. He thought it was a trick of the mist, but after the disappearance, he was convinced it was no man at all. But of all the explanations, none stir the imagination more than the theory of the sky. The circular impressions burned into the earth, the strange lights witnessed in the sky that night, the humming vibration heard miles away. These all suggest something not of this world. Was the entire village abducted by an alien force? Could hundreds of people have been taken in one moment, leaving their homes frozen in time? Skeptics argue it is impossible, yet believers point to countless modern stories of strange lights and missing time as echoes of what occurred in that forgotten valley. What makes this theory more chilling is that in the 20th century, when interest in UFO phenomena surged, researchers revisited the site. They reported unusual magnetic readings, compasses spinning wildly, and electronic devices malfunctioning. A team of geologists also discovered that the soil in the circular impressions contained elements fused at a temperature far higher than any fire could reach. Something had scorched the ground with precision centuries earlier, and the marks remained etched into the land like scars. But perhaps the most disturbing accounts come not from science, but from the experiences of those who dared to spend a night in the abandoned ruins. In the 1960s, a group of students camped there, seeking adventure and proof of the supernatural. They brought cameras, tape recorders, and journals. At first, the night was uneventful, though they noted the unsettling quiet. No insects, no owls, no wind. Around midnight, they claimed to hear faint voices drifting through the ruins, whispers overlapping in languages they could not recognize. When one student turned on his tape recorder, the machine refused to function, though the batteries were fresh. By morning, the group packed in haste and left, shaken and pale. Later, when they developed their film, one photograph showed something none of them remembered seeing. A cluster of ghostly figures in the distance, blurred and translucent, as though caught between worlds. Another story tells of a farmer in the 1980s who, while searching for lost sheep, wandered too close to the site. He reported suddenly feeling dizzy, his vision swimming, and then he blacked out. When he awoke, he was lying outside the ruins hours later, with no memory of how he had gotten there. His watch had stopped, and the sheep were never found. He swore never to return, warning others that the village was not just abandoned, it was alive, watching, and waiting. Some modern investigators suggest that the village lies upon a thin veil between dimensions, a place where realities overlap. The disappearance of the villagers, they argue, may have been a shift, a moment when the entire community slipped into another realm. This could explain why their belongings remained but their bodies did not, why no trace of their departure was ever found. If this is true, then perhaps the villagers are still alive, somewhere beyond our reach, living in a parallel world, unaware that centuries have passed here. But if they are still alive, why do whispers and shadows seem to linger at the ruins? Why do travelers claim to see fleeting figures in the mist, faces staring from darkened windows of houses that should be empty? Could it be that some part of them remains trapped, echoes of their souls bleeding into our reality? What is even more unsettling is that this is not the only case of a vanishing community. Similar tales exist around the world. The lost colony of Roanoke in America, the Anjikuni village in Canada, and smaller stories of groups disappearing without a trace. The Vanishing Village is part of a pattern, suggesting that whatever force is responsible has acted more than once, across continents and centuries. Are these isolated tragedies, or are they connected by a hidden design? The modern world prides itself on reason, yet even scientists who study the site admit that the evidence resists explanation. The soil burns, the magnetic anomalies, the unnatural silence, the reports of strange lights. These defy conventional answers. And while legends may exaggerate, the core truth remains. Hundreds of people vanished in a single night, and no explanation has ever been proven. As we close this tale, the Vanishing Village lingers in our minds not just as a mystery of the past, but as a warning of the future. If such a thing could happen once, could it happen again? Could an entire town in our modern age, with all our technology and surveillance, simply vanish without trace? Or has it already happened in ways we fail to see? Perhaps the next time you pass an empty house, hear whispers in the wind, or dream of faceless figures standing at your door, you might wonder, did they come from the vanishing village, reaching out from wherever they were taken? Or are they here to remind us that the line between our world and the unknown is thinner than we dare to believe? And so, the vanishing village remains what it has always been, an open wound in history, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to haunt us forever.